All right. Hey, folks. How are you doing? I've got Klint Rudolph here with the Xcite group to talk to us about Google Search Console. If you don't know me, I'm Hillary Wicks. I'm the Marketing and Events Manager for America Outdoors. And this is our marketing webinar for the spring. When Klint and I met to talk about what to discuss for all of you fine folks, we were talking about how many tools Google has for us and how we've introduced different ones to you in the past. Most of you are probably familiar with analytics through some of Klint's sessions. Maybe you're using Tag Manager, but the majority, I think, are not familiar with Google Search Console or, aren't using it to any robust extent. So I'll let Klint get into all that, but that was our thinking behind this. So this is really kind of an introductory webinar in a series that we'll be doing. Some quick reminders. Let's see, we've got another webinar coming up, our third and final one for the spring, May 10th, which is called What Do I Pay My Employees? And that's going to be, not necessarily for your seasonal employees, but more like your long-term. How do you research and strategize how to make a compensation plan? If you are seeing the presentation, it looks a little bit small. There should be 3 lines that you can use to make my face smaller and make the presentation larger. Also, Klint will be taking questions as we go, so you don't have to save them for the end. If something comes up and you want a little bit more information or you need Klint to clarify, go ahead and type it in the question module and I will interrupt and get it answered for you. And we also will be having an option for questions at the end. All right, let's go ahead and dive in. Klint, I'm going to hand it over to you and let's do some learning.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and turn off my camera. That should probably help too, Hillary. If we both have our cameras off, the screen should get bigger. Is that the case?
Yep, totally. That
Awesome.
works, and I'll come back on just if someone has questions.
Yeah, no worries. Feel free to just interrupt me. Well, good morning or afternoon, everyone, depending on where you are in the world. This is an exciting presentation for me. This is the first time that I've taught a group on Google Search Console. It is an incredibly powerful tool. It is incredibly useful, but it can be incredibly confusing as well. So as I'm oft to say, today's webinar is going to be a bit like drinking from a fire hose. Today will be a lot like drinking from a fire hose. So a couple things. Understand that this is trying to pack an overview into an hour, which is difficult with something this big. And so Xcite and AO are committed for this to be a long-term process. We want this to go throughout the year. We're going to record this. We're going to have follow-up blogs that go into more detail so that you feel really comfortable in this. There'll be some of you who may not even know what this is, don't know if you have it, and there may be others of you who have it. So there'll be parts of this that are helpful for everyone, but today's sort of a high-level overview of Google Search Console, why you would use it, what it is, what are some tips for where you can go and look at helpful information. So like Hillary mentioned, feel free to interrupt with questions. I have no problem with that, and we will jump right in. All right, so what are we going to talk about today? First, we'll spend a little time on what is Google Search Console. Then we'll go into how to set it up. Third, we'll talk about how to use it. And fourth, we'll talk about some advanced tips. All right, so what is Google Search Console? It's a free tool that was built by Google that helps you optimize your website for search. There's a couple of things that are really important about it, but that's the 40,000 aerial view of what it is. It gives you lots of information, one, that is crucial for SEO. So you can figure out things like what keywords your site ranks for, what position you rank in for those keywords, how often people are clicking on your result after typing in specific queries or keywords, right? And then what other sites have linked back to your content. That's sort of high level of the SEO side of Search Console. The other side is it's also the way that Google communicates with you any issues that are going on with your website. So crawl errors, that means pages of your website that Google can't access or index. That's one thing. Manual actions. Manual actions are that Google has penalized your site for a violation of their guidelines. We're talking about things on the site we shouldn't, someone hacked our site, we have malware, something's going on. This is where Google will communicate with you. So it's imperative and vital that you have it, that you know who has access to this for your website, because this is the way that Google communicates with you if there's anything wrong with your site. So for these reasons, Search Console is an absolute must learn for your marketing toolbox. All right, so how do you set it up? Unlike some of Google's other tools like Tag Manager, like Analytics, like Google Ads, Google Search Console is incredibly simple to set up. So if you don't know if you have it, if you know for a fact you don't have it, you can go to this URL, search.google.com, and you will be prompted to this welcome screen. And essentially, all you have to do is type in your URL, and that's it. Now it has to start collecting data. Because you set this up today, there'll be 0 in there. So once it's connected to your site, it doesn't retroactively go back and get a bunch of data. It only works from when you set it up moving forward. And there are 2 different ways that you can set it up. Today's webinar, you'll see, I'll do a big screenshot first as I introduce it, and then we'll go into a slide where I have a smaller same screenshot with some notes for you to follow along or to keep track of for later. There will be a recording of this that Hillary will have. You will be sent that link tomorrow. You will also know that it will be on AO's website. We'll have it on our website. And I will also send out the slides to Hillary. So Hillary, I don't know how you want to get that to the group, but I will certainly provide the slides for everyone as well, because you'll probably want them as a follow along when you're starting to explore this on your own. So these 2 options, you can select a property by adding a domain or a URL prefix. Preferably, we want to use the one on the left. That's the domain tab. The only thing that is different between the 2 is that URL prefix means you have to add everything for every version of your website. So for example, HTTPS www.yourwebsite.com and HTTP yourwebsite.com with or without the HTTPS and with or without the www. The good news about the URL prefix is you don't have to do any verification. So there is an added step to add the domain. But what's beautiful about the domain is it will add all of your subdomains. It will add www and not www. It will add HTTPS and HTTP. The only thing is that it requires verification. And the easiest way to do that is to verify using your Google Analytics tracking ID. There are several options for verification, but if you know your Google Analytics tracking ID, you can log into Google Analytics. In the middle section under property settings, you'll find it. You can grab it and put that in, and you're done with the verification. And that's all there is to do to set up Google Search Console. Now it's just going to start collecting a bunch of data. So let's talk a little bit now about how do we use it? What is it for? So great, it's a tool that Google communicates to me how I'm doing in organic search, and also if there's something wrong with my website. But truly, what are the reports and how can we use them? All right, so there are 10 basic things that everyone should understand about Google Search Console and how your website is performing. So there are lots of reports. Like I said, drinking from a fire hose, there's tons and tons of stuff in there. You can go in and you can get lost really easy. So these 10 things are the basics to get under your belt to understand what you can do with this tool. Finding out what keywords your website or your content ranks for. See how users are interacting with your results in Google search. Find out where your pages are ranking for specific keywords. See how many pages of your site are in Google's index. Submit your site or specific pages for indexing. So we'll talk about each of these individually. Identify crawl errors and unindexable pages on your site. Submitting a sitemap. Making sure that all of your pages are mobile friendly. See what other sites have linked to your site, and also finally see if your site has any penalties with Google. So let's dig into these. The first thing you see when you log in is the overview report. The overview report shows 4 main sections. performance, coverage, experience, and enhancements. We're going to get into each of these, what they mean as we get through the 10 basic things. But the overview report is the first thing that you'll see when you log in. So when you log in, this is what will pop up here on the right. But what each of these means, performance, coverage, experience, and enhancements, we're going to talk about as we go through. So the first, how do we see what keywords our website or our content ranks for? When you log into Google Search Console, right here on the left-hand side, you'll see performance. And the first thing you'll see there is search results. So if you click on that, right, what will happen is it will contain all of the performance section. Everything in this performance section under Google search results are some really awesome pieces of data that you'll want to rely on for your SEO. One of those is the keywords that your site and pages rank for. They're called queries within the performance report under search results. So again, here we've got performance, search results. You are immediately prompted with a screen, and at the top you will see total clicks, total impressions, average click-through rate, and average position. What you see here is that by default, clicks and impressions are the only two that show. If you want to see data for both click-through rate and average position as well, all you have to do is check mark these two boxes and that will come into play. So you see this graph at the top, and as you scroll down, you can sort of see the top of it here. You will see a list of keywords that you are ranking for. So this is my account for Xcite. So you see right here, if I scroll down, I've got queries here. So here you can see my queries, and I've selected position and click-through rate to come up. So all four of the major metrics that I care about are showing right here with a list of my keywords. What you'll see here is that you have the opportunity to look at this by query, by page, by country, by device, and by search appearance and dates. We'll get into each of these a little bit, but the most important for all of us in the webinar is going to be queries and pages. Those are really where we want to focus. So if I want to see the queries, obviously you can see that they're selected by default. I can scroll and see through all of them. Oh, and by default, like I said, only the clicks and impressions will show down in this graph. But back at the top, like we talked about, if you just click right here on click-through rate and average position, it will bring those metrics in for, like you see here, where all four of those metrics are showing for our keywords. And then you can just sit here and page through. It will show 10 keywords or queries at a time. And with the arrow, you can page through and see every single one. So now I can see what keywords my site is ranking for, right? What's my click-through rate? What's my average position for these queries? Now, one of the other things that you can do that is always fun is I want to see what keywords my individual pages rank for, not just my site as the whole. So the first thing I do there is I click on queries. Excuse me, the default will be queries. I'll click on pages, and then I find the page that I want to look for. Again, you can page through. This screenshot only shows a couple, so we could all see it on the screen bigger. But there will be every page of your website in here, and you can page through to find a particular page that you're looking for. Once I say, okay, I want to see that page, what are the keywords that are ranking for my home page versus my OTT and CTV page? So I would click on one of those, right, on this OTT advertising where I've got the number 2. And then what will happen is the screen will refresh, and now I have to go back and click queries again. And now I'm looking at queries just specifically for this page of my website. Again, with all of the metrics we talked about, clicks, impressions, click-through rate, and position. So that is how you can see difference between queries versus what pages you rank for and queries for those specific pages. If you want to go back and look at another page, all you have to do is scroll up to the top and you'll see these breadcrumbs right here. This is where you can change the date range, and you'll see that right now it's filtered specifically on this page. If I click this little X button, it will go back and default to all pages. And you can continue to dig page by page and go back to queries again, go back to pages again. And always at the top will be your breadcrumb filter where you can reset it and go back to to see all results. Cool. All right, so second thing that we want to do in Google Search Console is see how our users are interacting with our results. And right at the top here, you'll see those metrics, almost like you would with a Google pay-per-click ad, Google pay-per-click campaign, excuse me. You will be able to see total clicks, total impressions, average click-through rate, and average position. We're going to dig into average position in a second report here, so we'll get into that in a second. But right at the top, for all of your keywords, you will see here's the interaction rate. And then when you page through, like we looked at in these queries, now I can look individually by query at the interaction rate of every one of my keywords, right? So how engaged are people from doing a search to clicking through to my website? So when you first open the report, the data is displayed for the entire website, like we talked about here. Oops, sorry. But if you click to the Pages tab and select a page or a specific query like we talked about, then it will show the data here at the top and the graph for that specific page of your website. So each of the metrics is selectable. Like I told you, clicks, impressions, average click-through rate, and average position. When they're all selected, the background of them will be color. When you unselect one of them, it will go to white. So that'll tell you which isn't showing. And the colors obviously match the corresponding graph lines. All right, so now number 3, let's find out where your pages are ranking for specific keywords. This is more into that average position. So as you can see, I've unchecked clicks, impressions, and click-through rate, and I'm only looking at average position. So it is the one that has a color background. The other 3 go back to white. So the last metric available in the performance report is average position. And position refers to where you're ranked in the search results for specific keywords. If you're the top result, the very first in Google Organic, your position would be 1. If you're at the top of page 2, your position might be 11. There are 10 organic places on a page. So average position is the sum, right? Is an average of the sum of all of your positions divided by the total number of keywords that you rank for. And why I bring this up, and we'll dig into this, but you look at my website, and if I looked at this and we were spending a lot of time and effort, which we are, on our own SEO campaigns, I would look at an average position of 43 and get scared and go, oh crap, we are not doing our job. What's going on? The way Google Search Console works is it brings in every query, every keyword, right, that you could possibly rank for in the world. So there are thousands and thousands and thousands of keywords. Not all of those keywords are my focus for SEO. So that's why it becomes really important that you dig into all of, if you filter by page, right, it will show the average position for all the keywords a specific page ranks for, or you can dig into every keyword individually, like we talked about here. So average position at the top really isn't the most helpful or useful piece of data. But when we scroll down to the table below the graph, just like you see in this screenshot, it will show you what position you rank for each individual keyword. And this data is incredibly useful. So for Xcite, if I were to look at this and go, oh crap, our average position is 43, what the heck's going on with our SEO? Well, our SEO focus for the last 6 months, as you know, when we did the webinar at AO about CTV and OTT advertising, we wanted that to be one of our main focuses. So if I start digging into those queries, you can see that my average position is 1.8, 2, 2.3, 3.7, 1.7, 3.6, 1, and 1.1. So for these keywords around what my focus is, I am firmly at the top of page 1. So if I dig in, I don't have to go scream at any of our team doing the SEO. I can say, whew, we're in a good spot. But that average position of 43 can throw people off. So I wanted to make sure that we spent some time talking about that. So using this data, you can not only see where each page of your site ranks for specific keywords, but you can also use it to monitor how your rankings change after you make site adjustments or optimizations. So for us, obviously, I'm in here looking all the time. I want to see when I go in and add a new page, when we updated and we optimized our CTV page, what happened to our position, right? If I was at 4 before and I come back in here and go, great, we're now 1, 2, and 3, that's perfect. So you can use it to understand what's going on when you make changes on your site. can be incredibly useful for adding new pages. It can be incredibly useful for adding new blog posts, as well as if you were to launch a new website. Cool. Number 4 is to see how many pages of our site are in Google's index, and that's the coverage area. So you'll see here on the right, I've got the coverage area, and there are several things up here. Right now, we're curious about how many of our total pages are in Google's index. So you can see on the valid area, that's what we care about. I have lots that I've excluded from the index for a reason. They're blind login pages, they're client reports, portals that we use that I don't care that Google indexes. But I can see right here, valid tells me that Google has indexed 527 pages of my website. So if you, again, go into the reports, click coverage, and then click on valid, and it will highlight in green. It will show you this is all of the pages of your website, so you can see if some fell off or if you added new pages. This wouldn't be so consistent. I didn't add any new pages in the last 3 months, so it's pretty flat. But that tells me the total number. Now, where that's useful is you can pair the total number of pages in your sitemap, right? So if you're not familiar, every website should submit a sitemap to Google. We'll talk about how to do that in a second. But that sitemap is essentially a directory of all the pages on your website. And by submitting a sitemap to Google, you're telling Google, here are all the pages on my website that I want you to index. What you can do to check if you have any errors or penalties is compare what Google shows here in Google Search Console with your sitemap. It just so happens for Xcite's sitemap, I have 527 pages on the sitemap, and I have 527 pages showing here in my site indexed pages from Google. So I have nothing to worry about. Everything that I want Google to look at, they are looking at and have indexed. So that's great. If you don't, if there's a mismatch, right, then we can figure out what to do to why are we not getting some of those pages. They may show up here in errors or in warnings, and we'll talk a little bit about that in just a second. Number 5 on our top 10 list is to submit a page for indexing. So if you have found that your sitemap and what Google has indexed for you in the coverage area is not equal, say you're missing a couple pages, it could be that those are new pages and it takes Google some time to index pages. No one knows how long. It can take weeks, it can take months, sometimes it happens very quickly. There's no rhyme or reason to it, and they certainly won't tell us how often they do it. But what's good is you can do that in here. So anytime you can submit a page for indexing, right here at the top is what's called the URL inspection. When I click that, it's going to put my cursor right up here into inspect any URL on my website. So I've pasted this blog post, which was an article about us being at America Outdoors in December, and I put it in here, and it says, oh, your URL is live on Google. If it wasn't, if this was a brand new thing, it would say not on Google, and you could click this request indexing button. So again, review, click URL inspection. It will put your cursor up here, paste the URL that you want to check, and if it says you're on Google, you're good. If it says you're not on Google, this request indexing button will light up, and you can click that request indexing, and Google will index that URL. Cool. Identify any errors on your site, crawl errors, unindexable pages, etc. Again, just like we did before for the total number of pages, we want to go to the coverage report, and we will check mark errors and valid with warnings. On Xcite's particular website, you see that there are zeros for both. If you had something here, right, sometimes a developer will add canonical or no index tags to a page to prevent Google from crawling it while you're building a new site or on a dev server. Other times you might have deleted a page like your specials page for last year and you forgot to have a 301 redirect in place. This will find all of that. Google Search Console logs issues for these types of problems, so you don't need to do it yourself. And you can find these errors quickly by going into this report, coverage errors and valid with warnings. If you had some, right, right below this date graph would be a list of those errors and valid with warnings. It will tell you exactly what pages they are, and it will also tell you how to fix it. So the new Search Console, for those of you who are familiar with Google Search, used to be called Webmaster Tools. The new interface takes a bit of time to get used to, but truly this coverage tool that we're talking about is absolutely stunning. It not only shows which pages aren't indexed or may have a problem with them, but it also explains exactly why these pages weren't indexed and lets me know how to fix it. So it helped me notice a developer's mistake on one of the websites I was working on. The website started losing rankings for no reason. Like I saw in the rankings report, we were tanking. Well, apparently there was a significant number of pages that were marked no index by mistake. And since that's a pretty rare mistake, it would have taken me a long time to figure that out if it weren't for Google Search Console. I was in there already checking keyword rankings. I could go to the report, I could look at the errors, and I could see that I had 404 errors on pages, or that I had marked things no index. So what's cool about this is 404 errors are a big no-no on your site. We talk about it all the time in SEO. It's why we run weekly audits on our websites that we do SEO for, because I have to make sure that I don't have any broken links on the website. And there's a million tools to do it. You have to pay for a lot of them. This is a free way for you to understand all the time, is there anything going on with my site? So you can fix those 404 errors. You can either resubmit a sitemap or request indexing tool that we just saw when I paste the URL and request indexing. So 404 errors are usually a result of older broken links that have previously been indexed by Google. With this feature, like I said, we can easily find URLs on our domain that are producing 404 errors and quickly fix them. We talked a little bit about the sitemap, and that's number 7. Number 7 on our top 10 hit list is submit a sitemap. So right in the report, under the coverage, we would hit sitemaps right here. Now, how this works is almost every website, every major CMS builds a URL automatically for a sitemap of your website. For example, if you have a WordPress, WordPress does your site / sitemap.xml. It's generated automatically. So all I have to do is log into Google Search Console if I've never submitted a sitemap before. For those of you new at this, that is definitely one of the first things you'll want to do. Once you get this set up, you'll want to go to the sitemaps area, figure out the URL for your sitemap on your website. Like I said, if it's WordPress, it'll look just like mine, sitemap.xml / afteryear.com, and hit submit. Google will show here in the status pending. It will show the date it was submitted and when it was last read. So that's the beauty of this. Anytime you make changes to your website, last read doesn't mean by me, that means by Google. So even though I submitted the latest sitemap on my website October of 2021, Google last read it March 28th of 2022. So not too long ago, Google continues to come in and go, did they make a change? Is there something new in the sitemap I need to be aware of? But it only does that if you have Google Search Console, right? Otherwise, you're on your own. So super simple. Again, click sitemaps on the left-hand side. There'll be a URL here. You need to figure out what that URL is for your website. There's lots of ways to find one. So if you have questions or you don't know what yours are, please, we can feel free to offline, or you can shoot us an email and we can walk you through that. You click submit and you're done. Usually it takes a couple weeks for this to happen. You can come back in here and check at any time. It'll show you the date you submitted it, and the status here would show pending. Once Google reads it and has it, then they will change your status to success. Cool. Number 8, we want to make sure our pages are mobile friendly. It's very difficult to figure this out, and when you add new pages, or you add a new blog post, or you change up some of your products for checkout in your reservation system, right? It's hard for us to know, how does that look across lots of different mobile phones, not just the one that I have. It seems like we're now in an age where every cell phone has a different size again. There's no consistency. They're tiny. There's ones that flip. There's ones that fold. And so it's almost impossible to understand if we've got any mobile friendly issues on our website. So with Google rolling out mobile first indexing, which means Google doesn't even index our desktop pages anymore, doesn't care. All Google index in its brain is our mobile pages. So it's crucial that we understand that all of the pages on our website are mobile friendly. Luckily, again, this Google Search Console makes it easy to find if you have any mobile page issues. So you just click on mobile usability down here on the side where our navigation for all the reports is, and you will look right here to see if there are any errors. So I have zero mobile usability issues on the site. If I had some, whatever this number was, they would all be right here under details, and it lists out what's wrong, what Google thinks is wrong, why this isn't mobile friendly, and will tell you exactly why, and will allow you to get with your developer to fix it. I always check all of my blog posts and my web pages just to make sure they're mobile friendly, especially when I put a new blog post up. Did I put the pictures in the right place? Is it going to resize correctly? So one of the things that I'll do is as soon as I publish it, I'll come in here. I'll want to make sure within the first week of me publishing a new page that I come in here and double check, make sure that my new page didn't show up for something wrong with it. So it will provide you, like I said, if there are any elements that didn't fit on the page, fonts that are too small to read on mobile, all of the things we talk about. Are we quick to load? If you had pages that were taking too long to load, all of that would be down here in the details section. So it will tell you exactly what's wrong and what needs to be corrected. So it ensures that all of your web pages are providing a better mobile experience for your visitors, which also in turn ends up meaning that you will rank higher in search. Number 9 on our top 10 list will be see what other sites link to you. As you know, with SEO, part of the three-legged triangle of SEO is architecture of your website, backlinks, and on-page content. Those are the 3 pillars of SEO from a high level. So understanding who links back to you is super important. How many do you have? Who are they? What pages are they linking to? All of that is found right here in our links report. So again, you can see I've had to scroll down a little bit on the left-hand side. You no longer see performance up here because I've had to scroll. So we've been in coverage, we've been in sitemap, we've been in mobile usability, right? Now we're down here in links. So this report will show us exactly what other sites link back to us, right? You can see right here, top link pages, external links. So there are 4 reports in this: external links, internal links. We'll talk about the rest of them in just a second. But right here at the top, when you go in to click links, you will see this external links. So it gives me the total number, 1,027 links. And then it breaks down my pages. What are my top pages that people are linking back to? So I can click this more button. Click this more button, and it will show me all of those 1,000 links that are coming back to my website, or 1,101, sorry. What's interesting is this will tell you by page what people are finding interesting about your website. So years ago, 12 years ago almost now, when we started Xcite, I wrote an article called "What's the difference between cost per acquisition and cost per click?" It seems to be very confusing for people. It certainly was 12 years ago. And what's interesting is it was an article that I wrote just for grins, and people continue to pick up on it. As you can see, I have 18 links back to that one blog post. It's not something I've ever farmed out, not something I've ever asked for, but people do research, people are trying to look for quotes for things. And so this report will show you what people are linking back to on your website. Is it a blog post you wrote, as opposed to just some of the tools out there that tell you, oh, you have 1,101 links. Great, I want to know exactly what pages those are. Well, this is how you can do that. The other reports in this section, so the top link pages right here that we talked about, external, right? That is all the people linking back to your website. Your top link pages internal gives you an idea of how many links you have on your own website that link back internally to your pages. The third report, as you scroll down right here, will be top linking sites. So this will be by website, all those people who link back to your website. This will show you, there might be one site that has 15 on it or one that has 100 on it. It will show you a list of all those sites that link back to you, not just what page on your site they link to. And the last is top linking text. And why that report is important, if you scroll down below this top linking sites, you'll see the top linking text report. All of them have this more snippet so that you can go in and see the full report for each area. Top linking text is really important because that means those are the words that people are using to link back to you. So when we're doing SEO, if I'm really trying to optimize my website for OTT and CTV advertising, then I need those keywords to be in the text that someone is linking back to my website on. So I can go into that top linking text report and I can see all of the words that people are using to link back to my website. So those 4 reports are pretty crucial for SEO and super easy to find. Again, scrolling down, click the links button. The 4 reports will show up here. You can go more in depth by clicking the more button into each of the 4 reports, and you will see the full list. All right, number 10, the dreaded Google penalty. You want to see if your site has any penalties. So how you do that? Down here at security and manual actions, you have 2. Security issues are more things like your site's been hacked and Google thinks there's something wrong with it. Manual actions are you have broken something. You have broken something on Google's quality guidelines and they're telling you about it before they do anything about it. So the good news about this with Search Console is if you ever happen to break or violate Google's quality guidelines, it will issue a manual action against your website. What that means is that when in years past, and for people who don't have Google Search Console, Google's not going to like call you or try to email your website and say, oh, by the way, there's something wrong. We're going to remove you from the index. Just one day you realize you're not there anymore. Even if you Google your own name, you can't find it. And that's the only way people know that there was a problem. The beauty here is that if Google issues a manual action, you will get an alert inside your Google Search Console account under that securities and penalties section, and they will do it ahead of time. So they're giving you the opportunity to fix whatever they found before they remove you from the index. So typically these manual reactions, how do you break Google's quality guidelines, are things like buying crappy backlinks, publishing stolen, scraped, or low quality content, keyword stuffing, a bunch of sneaky redirects, right? So if you are someone that you've hired to work on your site ever engaged in any questionable practices, or you weren't sure if they were good at SEO, it's worth checking out to see if you've ever been issued a manual penalty. So that's the section you can do it. You could also get issued a manual penalty if Google believed that your site was hacked, right? So it will let you know all of that, what's wrong with it, and give you the chance to fix it before something happens. So hopefully these are something you'll never have to worry about. But if your traffic drops rapidly and you aren't sure why, here's a great place to go check right away. One more time, we'll review it. Down here, scroll at the bottom, manual actions, and it will show you if you have any right here and why. Awesome. Are there any questions before we get into the advanced tips? Does anyone have anything about that top 10 hit list we talked about? Have you had any questions come in, Hillary?
No, I haven't had any questions yet. If you want to raise your hand, you can also do that, and I can let you ask your question out loud. Otherwise, go ahead and start popping those questions in the question box, and maybe we'll get to them after the advanced tips.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that we got through this so that we had time to have people ask questions or have a discussion, or you've tried this before and get lost, or whatever the case may be. All right, so we have a couple advanced tips here. The first is SEO KPIs, right? When I talked about the beginning, clicks, impressions, average position, and your click-through rate, the biggest part that is scary about this is not focusing on the correct KPIs. So you'd never want to focus on only one of those metrics because it can be misleading. You want to look at the combination of impressions, click-through rate, and average position and clicks so that you get an understanding of what's going on. So a high number of impressions and an excellent average position could occur if you rate well for certain keywords. But if you don't match search intent, your CTR is going to suffer. People aren't going to click through because something's wrong, and therefore we will lose our position. So looking at all of them together, and we'll talk a little bit about that tip in particular here in a second, but make sure that you're focused not on just one of the metrics, but understanding the sum total of the 4 metrics when you're looking at your SEO KPIs for your keywords. Second advanced tip is to always submit new URLs. it can take weeks or months for Google to find your URL. So you should check any immediate impact of new posts or pages on your website. Like I said, I jump into the tool, make sure there's no errors, but guess what? If you didn't submit it, there won't be any data there because Google doesn't know that your new content exists. So after you add a new page or you add a new blog post or you even update an old blog post, go resubmit it in the inspection tool we talked about in the beginning. Better to get the new URL indexed as quickly as possible and not wait for Google. Third is canonical domain settings. In the settings section, you will be asked when you go through the setup, and if you already have this and you weren't part of the setup, go into your settings just to make sure, but you want to specify what domain you prefer for your website. So HTTPS with the www, without the www, however your website shows up on a URL bar, we want to make sure that we are selecting that setting inside of Google Search Console. If you don't, what happens is Google might view www.thexcitegroup.com differently than it rates thexcitegroup.com. So for all of the metrics we've talked about and all the reports today, it may divide credit for clicks and views and links and engagement and all these things we've been looking at completely separately and is super hurtful to our SEO efforts. So something that everyone forgets about is just checking the domain settings inside your Search Console, which is where you're communicating to Google what you would prefer to be, what address you actually prefer. All right. Let's get a little bit deeper into that check all metrics that we talked about. Another advanced tip is to change meta tags and check your click-through rate impact. If you have a query getting a lot of impressions, but very few to no clicks, this is most likely a keyword that we are close to breaking through on, but we just need a little more optimization to make sure that we're helping our website and our efforts along. So what we do is we update the title tag and meta descriptions on a monthly basis, quarterly basis, run tests to see if new copy can improve our CTR. Just like you would in a Google Ads campaign by changing out ad copy, not a bad thing to do inside of an SEO campaign. And because I can check the impact, this is where I can see low-hanging fruit right away. So I've looked at my queries report, like we talked about in the beginning, keywords that I rank for, and I have organized it by lowest click-through rate. As you can see, I have zeros. So CPC marketing and PPC optimization, I show up for almost a little over 9,000 impressions a month between those two queries. And both of them have netted me 2 clicks. That is horrible. Of course, I want to show up for those. Cost per click or pay-per-click optimization, that is something our team is very, very good at. I need to be showing up in these places. Here's how I can identify I've got a problem. Google already thinks I should be there because I'm showing up for 9,000 queries, but I'm not giving the people who are doing the searching what they need to see to click through. So my title and my description must not be compelling enough to get them to click through. So I can go in, I can optimize those titles and descriptions, and I can come back here and measure the impact. I know what was happening. Did me changing that up make a difference? Or are a lot of these queries different kind of search intent? Meaning maybe someone's not looking for an agency like me to fix it, they're looking for a book to learn how to do it themselves. In which case, I don't want to be in these queries. So it's a way for you to understand, where does Google think I should rank high, yet I'm not getting the traffic to my site. What can I do? I can check this quickly, change up my meta tags, and then come back to see the impact. Don't fall into the data trap. So just like when looking at any tool, right? Google Search Console, there is so much in here. There's a lot. So follow the KISS principle with this, right? Keep it simple, stupid. There are tons of metrics and it's easy to get sucked into the minutia of things. Like I could say, if I looked at it, I had 17 impressions for marketing agency in Switzerland last Thursday. Like, what's going on? Why all of a sudden am I showing up in Switzerland? What's happening, right? Want to let those things go and focus on the big picture more, or at least as much as you do any little ones. There's so much data, it's easy to get nuanced. or lost when you're trying to make a nuanced decision. So how could I increase my impressions? Am I optimized enough? You drive yourself crazy looking at the last tip that I gave you on high impressions and low clicks. But understand that important decisions for your business are being able to look at the big picture and use this as one tool of many. Google Search Console does not take the place of Google Analytics. It does not take the place of other SEO tools you may use like SEMrush or Moz or whatever these tools are. It is one piece of the puzzle to let you do things that are really important. Understand where you're ranking, understand a way for Google to communicate to you if it doesn't like something on your website or if it's not mobile friendly. So just don't fall into the data trap, and understand that it's one piece of the puzzle that you have to measure. Cool. Well, that's all I have for slides today. Hopefully that was informative. We've got plenty of time for questions, so if anyone has any, let me know. Obviously, we'll send this out. It's got our website and email on it. So if you want the slides, you'll have them and can send them out.
Awesome. Looks like Dean has his hand raised. Dean, I'm going to try to unmute you. Let's see if you are able to chat. While we figure that out, let's do Scott's question. Scott asked, how do you verify that your Search Console snippet is set up correctly on your website?
So you don't have to do anything to your website necessarily, Scott, except for verifying your domain. So when you go in and set it up, right, you'll put in your URL in that domain tab, and Google will say, okay, please prove to us that you own this, and you will use your Google Analytics ID. And at that point, that's all you need to do. There are a million ways that you could certainly do it. That's the easiest. So another way for verification is to put the snippet on your website. You would have to look at the raw code or have a developer check for that. That's why I always say, like, just using your Google Analytics ID is the easiest and cleanest way to verify.
All right, Dean, I think we're in business.
I'm unmuted, I think, yeah. Hey, Klint.
Hey, Dean.
Hey, when you were talking about indexing after doing a new blog post or updating a page, is that something that, like we can do manually like that, or Google eventually gets to it? Is that
Google,
kind of those are the options?
Google absolutely will eventually get to it, okay. Especially when your site ranks, like I know your site, it ranks well for things, it's not gonna wait forever. But for example, I may not do it immediately. Like when we wrote the post for Xcite being at AO, I don't need to go in and submit that to be indexed immediately because I really don't care, right? Like that's not something that I'm hoping Google picks up and throws in organic search results. But in an effort to advance my SEO efforts on connected TV and OTT advertising for my website, I will go write a blog in support of my SEO efforts for the page I'm trying to get indexed by Google. And I will absolutely submit that to be indexed immediately because it has impact on the bigger picture, bigger business picture of what I'm trying to do. So it's kind of that's why that don't fall into the data trap. Certainly it's useful. You could go OCD and do it every time, but I suggest doing it for the things that have business impact. You go update pricing on your raft page, doesn't matter to resubmit, but you add a new trip, I would go resubmit that immediately.
Definitely. Okay, that's exactly what I want to know. Perfect. Thank you.
You got it.
All right, Jenny, I believe your hand is raised. And so let's unmute you. You should get an unmute option.
All right. Can you hear me now?
I can.
Super. So I was just about to type my question. So mine is, I use Google Analytics to look at keyword rankings, page metrics, and I'm just wondering how Search Console is different, and what do programs like SEMrush, those add to what you can find out about beyond Search Console?
Yeah, so good question. If you're seeing your organic keyword rankings inside of Google Analytics, you are seeing that because you have Google Search Console. So one of the things that you want to make sure you do is make sure once you have it set up that you connect it. So you can log into your Google Analytics account, and there'll be a place on the left-hand side where in your reporting where it will say Search Console, right? And if it's connected, everything will be there. If it's not connected, it will prompt you and say, hey, you aren't connected. So it is under under acquisition in the reporting under Search Console, and you can look at landing pages, devices, queries. What you'll see is that all 4 of those subsections in Google Analytics are the same that I shared with you in Search Console. The difference is that you can get into a little deeper nuance with Search Console than you can with analytics on some of the reporting. But if you're seeing it in your analytics, it's 100% because your Google Search Console has been set up and connected. That's the only way that analytics will give you organic keywords. That changed about 5-6 years ago where Google quit reporting on your organic keywords. Here's the thing to take note of. When you go into your Search Console area and you look at your queries for your organic keywords, what's interesting is Google will show you, like I'm in an account right now, and it is literally saying % of the total. Inside of my analytics account, Google is only reporting on 50% of the keywords that I rank for. Analytics will not report on all of them. The only way for me to see every keyword that I'm ranking for is to go directly to Search Console. So does that answer your first question about the difference and why they're useful together, but that they're separate?
That was a great answer. I connected them so many years ago, I'd forgotten.
Yeah, well, it's totally right. And so for me, it's the same thing. Like I log into Google Analytics and it looks like, you know, my team is only having us show up for 3 or 4 variations of CTV and OTT advertising, when in fact, when I go inside of Search Console, we're showing up for like 35 different variations all on page 1. So we're doing way better than it looks like we're doing in analytics because Google's not reporting every variation to me. So that's that. In terms of tools like Moz and SEMrush, those are useful for a few different things. They're big, robust tools. So SEMrush, there are a million things. It's got sections that will help monitor your social posts. It's got sections that will help monitor your pay-per-click ads. It has sections that will monitor your paid social ads. But most of those tools started because the one thing that analytics and Search Console doesn't give us a great view of, especially when it comes to SEO, are our competitors. And that's why those tools are super, super useful, because now I can track my competitors, how many keywords they're ranking for. I can't see that unless I would have access to their Search Console account or their analytics account. So the competitive research and the keeping an eye on your competitors is exactly what the bulk of those other SEO tools are used for. Like I said, they're huge and robust, and you can do keyword research and look for other variations you should try to rank for. But the bulk of why they're really powerful in an SEO campaign is competitive research.
Very helpful. Thank you.
You got it.
Awesome. Thank you, Klint. I have a question.
Yeah.
For the average outfitter who's new to Search Console, how much time would you recommend they spend on this, getting started with what you've given them today?
Well, getting started, if they don't have it already, right, and this is something that they are just going to start, all you need to do is take the 5 minutes to set it up, and then it's going to be next season before you really get enough data to even look at it, right? Because the second you start it, that's when the meter starts. So traffic that you get today will start to trickle in, but there won't be anything of scale to give you any great idea until it runs for a time. So if you don't have this on your website, or you don't know if you have access to this yet, the important thing right now is just to get it set up. In terms of how much time I would spend, 0. If you're more seasoned, you know that you have this, you're actively doing SEO, this is part of your monthly check-in, like any other tool that you would use for your SEO. If you're having an agency do it for you, like we are, it will be part of our reporting to you. But if it's not something you're doing, if you're not even actively doing SEO, it's great once a quarter to bop in, make sure you don't have any crawl errors, make sure your site's mobile friendly, make sure Google hasn't issued any manual actions. That's it, right? It's like a quarterly or a bi-yearly kind of thing. if you're more advanced, you're more engaged, and you are actively doing SEO and trying to get your rankings high, this is a tool you should be in as often as you're in any of your other tools. If you're a person who looks at analytics weekly, you should be looking at this weekly. If you're a person who looks at it monthly, you should be looking at it monthly. I kind of say go on the cadence of all the other tools that you use. This is just another one to have another set of information and data to bounce around.
Awesome, thanks. Well, let's go ahead and wrap up, Clint. That was a ton of information, and I think everyone's going to be digesting it. Like we said at the beginning, this will be automatically sent to you tomorrow by GoToWebinar. It will have the recording attached and on doing something for the slides as well. And if you have any questions in the meantime, you can send them to me if you don't know Clint's info, and I'll make sure that you guys get connected.
Yeah,
Thanks,
and
everybody.
we'll have some follow-up blog posts about this, and potentially another webinar, but certainly we have a plan to do a workshop around this at AO next year. So if this is something that interests you, I would highly suggest making sure that you have access to it or getting it set up if you don't. And so you get all of that data from now until December, because the workshop will be certainly more hands-on. We'll look at specific instances and go through specific reports together in that workshop. So if that's of interest to you, that would be the one commercial, is make sure you get it set up soon so that we have all that data to play with by December.
Definitely. Thanks, Clint.
You
Appreciate
got
it.
it. See you guys. Take care.
Bye, everybody.